Welcome to our deep dive into the ideas of Alan Watts.
Oh, yeah,
This is a philosopher who can really make you rethink how you see the world.
absolutely.
And we're going to be exploring a series of his lectures called Do You Do It or Does It Do You?
Hmm.
Which kind of hints at the mind-bending concepts we're about to unpack.
Yeah.
Get ready to explore how our desires shape our reality,
Right.
the surprising truth about wanting power,
Yeah.
and the unexpected joy of letting go.
Watts had a real knack for turning conventional wisdom on its head.
Yeah.
He could take a really familiar idea like karma
Uh-huh.
and make you see it in a totally new light.
Okay, so let's start there.
Sure.
Most people, I think when they think of karma, they think about like this cosmic scorecard.
Right.
Like if you do something bad, the universe is going to get you back for it.
Oh, yeah.
But Watts suggests it's not that simple.
No, not at all.
So what's his take?
He sees karma as a reflection of the interconnectedness of everything.
Mm,
So it's not really about punishment, but about how our actions ripple outward and kind of create the reality we experience.
I see.
He uses this really vivid analogy of a swimming snake.
Okay.
So the two sides of the snake might seem like they're separate, but they're actually working together in this one fluid movement.
Hmm.
In the same way, we're not really isolated actors in the universe.
Okay.
We're part of this constant dance of cause and effect.
So it's less about what goes around comes around
Yeah.
and more about understanding that we're shaping our reality with every choice we make.
Precisely.
Wow.
And, that can be a pretty daunting realization for some people,
Oh, yeah.
especially those who might have experimented with psychedelics
Right.
and sort of glimpsed this interconnectedness.
Uh-huh.
Watts actually talks about the danger of inflation,
Okay.
where people mistake that feeling of unity for personal omnipotence.
Right. So they think I'm in control of everything.
Yeah, like I am God.
Yeah, exactly. That whole complex.
Right.
But Watts makes it clear that we're not these all-powerful puppet masters, right?
Right. He says that doing what you will is actually what we're always doing, even if we don't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
We're always choosing the path of least resistance in any given moment,
Okay.
based on our desires, our fears, our conditioning.
So even when we feel trapped or forced into something, there's still an element of choice involved.
Exactly. It might not feel like a conscious choice,
Yeah.
but it's still a choice based on what seems most appealing or least painful in that moment.
Wow. That's a subtle but pretty profound shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, where does blame fit into all of this?
Mm-hmm.
If we're always doing what we will, can we really blame others for our misfortunes?
Well, Watts actually talks a lot about blame,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to blaming others for our circumstances.
Right.
And he uses this fascinating example of people who are really accident-prone.
Mm.
He suggests that they might be attracting those experiences on some level,
Okay.
reflecting some kind of inner turmoil or conflict.
But he's very careful to point out, that this isn't about blaming the victim.
Exactly. Watts isn't saying that people who experience hardship are somehow deserving of it.
Right.
He's suggesting that there are often deeper unconscious patterns at play that contribute to our experiences.
So it's more about understanding those patterns than
Yeah.
pointing fingers.
Precisely. And, he also highlights how praise and blame are really two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
They only have meaning in relation to each other.
Hmm.
And he compares sages who rarely praise or blame
Yeah.
to someone throwing a rock into a well and hearing no splash.
Ah.
There's just this sense of acceptance and understanding that transcends the need for judgment.
It's a striking image. So is he saying we should just stop praising and blaming altogether?
Well, not necessarily. It's more about recognizing the limitations of those judgments.
Okay.
Watts argues that true understanding often leads to forgiveness. He talks about his experience with counseling
Yeah.
and how the more he understood the complexities of someone's situation, the harder it became to blame them.
So it's about seeing the bigger picture,
Yeah.
the web of causes and conditions that led to a particular situation,
Right.
rather than just focusing on the surface.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, that kind of understanding can be incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
It allows us to move beyond that blame game
Right.
and cultivate more compassion for ourselves and others.
Okay, this brings up a really big question for me.
Sure.
If we're all attracting experiences that mirror our inner state, and everything is interconnected like this,
Yeah.
does that mean we have no control over our lives? Is free will just an illusion?
That's where Watts really gets challenging.
Okay.
He uses this great analogy of a child with a plastic steering wheel in a car driven by their parent.
I see where this is going.
Yeah, so we might feel like we're in control, but The reality is...
Are often just along for the ride.
Exactly.
He even quotes Oppenheimer,
Oh, yeah.
who said, "The only way to stop the world from going to hell is not to try to prevent it."
It's a very provocative statement.
Really, it highlights the limitations of our control.
Yeah.
So is he saying we should just give up on trying to make the world a better place?
Not necessarily, but he's definitely challenging us to rethink our approach.
Okay.
Instead of trying to force our will on the world,
Yeah.
he suggests we explore what he calls the uncalculated life.
I love that phrase. It makes me think of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount,
Right.
where he talks about not worrying about tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
But I think a lot of people might misinterpret this as just giving up on planning altogether.
Yeah.
Like, why bother setting goals or working towards anything if we're not really in control anyway?
Right. It's not about becoming irresponsible or passive.
Okay.
Watts is emphasizing that we're already living an uncalculated life in many ways. Our bodies function without our conscious control.
Right.
And even our conscious decisions are often driven by subconscious patterns that we're not fully aware of.
So it's more about recognizing the illusion of control.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to completely eliminate planning or effort.
Precisely. It's about seeing the bigger picture.
Okay.
Understanding that our lives are unfolding as part of this larger interconnected process. And this brings us to a very personal question that Watts keeps returning to.
Which is, what do I desire? Here's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
He tells this story about doing vocational guidance with students
Uh-huh.
and always asking them, what would you do if money were no object?
Oh, yeah.
And you know what he found?
What's that?
Most people had these incredible dreams and passions that they had completely buried
Wow.
because they thought they couldn't make a living doing them.
It's like we're wasting our lives doing things we dislike
Yeah.
just to keep doing them.
Exactly, which begs the question, what would you do if money were no object?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What truly brings you joy and makes you feel alive?
That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Identifying those things that ignite our passion and make us feel truly connected to the world around us.
But Watts goes even deeper. He brings in this Buddhist idea that craving is the root of suffering,
Right.
but that it stems from a deeper ignorance or lack of vision. It's not just about curbing our desires,
Right.
but about understanding their nature and what truly motivates them.
He's inviting us into a dialogue here,
Yeah.
not just presenting a set of teachings.
And this is where we have to talk about the allure of power,
Oh, yeah.
especially in Western culture.
Especially in the West.
We're obsessed with control,
Right.
with being in charge, with shaping the world to our will.
Absolutely.
Watts even talks about how Eastern philosophy was initially presented to the West through this lens of like psychic technology and control.
Huh.
It was all about manipulating reality, achieving superhuman abilities, basically becoming invincible.
Wow.
And Watts admits that when he first encountered Eastern spiritual figures, he was kind of disappointed.
Oh, really?
They weren't these all-powerful, emotionless beings that he'd imagined.
So they were just normal people?
Not at all. They were ordinary humans, flaws and all. But that's where the real lesson lies.
What do you mean?
These figures had seen through the power game.
I see.
They realized it wasn't what they truly wanted.
Okay.
It didn't lead to fulfillment or lasting happiness.
So if power isn't the answer, then what is?
Yeah.
What motivates us to act if not this pursuit of control?
Watts suggests it's compassion.
Compassion.
A deep desire to connect with others who share our experiences, who understand our joys and sorrows.
Okay.
It's not about seeking a controllable doll, as he puts it,
Right.
but another self. Something surprising, alive, and capable of reciprocating our love and care.
I like that.
He even compares it to the experience of losing control in a positive way,
Yeah.
like in loving relationships or even sexual experiences. There's a sense of surrender, of letting go,
Yeah.
that allows for a deeper connection and a more authentic experience of ourselves.
I see.
And he brings up this concept of kenosis, which means self-emptying, and connects it to the Hindu idea of God surrendering power.
Interesting. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Kenosis is this fascinating idea that by emptying ourselves of our ego's need for control,
Right.
we actually become more fully ourselves.
Okay.
It's like we're making space for something greater to flow through us. Okay. I think I'm starting to get it.
Okay.
But can you give an example of what that might look like in everyday life?
Sure. Imagine you're completely absorbed in a creative activity,
Okay.
like painting, writing, or playing music.
Yeah.
You're not focused on the outcome. You're just fully present in the moment.
Right.
Letting the creative energy flow through you, that's a form of kenosis.
Hmm.
Or think about those moments of deep connection with another person,
Okay.
where you feel the sense of oneness and you lose track of time.
Yeah.
That's another example.
So it's about letting go of our ego's grip
Right.
and allowing ourselves to be fully present in the experience, whatever it may be.
Exactly. And Watts suggests that those who have truly mastered this art of kenosis are often the strongest, most unique personalities you'll ever encounter.
That seems counterintuitive.
Yeah.
You'd think someone who's emptied themselves would be kind of bland and wishy-washy.
It's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
They're not trying to fit into some preconceived mold
Right.
or live up to anyone's expectations. They've shed the limitations of their ego, those anxieties and insecurities that make us crave external validation.
Okay.
And in doing so, their true selves, with all their quirks and brilliance,
Yeah.
are free to shine through.
So it's like they've tapped into a deeper source of strength,
Yeah.
one that doesn't rely on dominating others or forcing their will upon the world.
Right. They understand that real power comes from aligning with the flow of life, from embracing change,
Yeah.
and from acting with compassion and understanding.
Wow. That's a powerful way to think about it.
It is.
And Watts doesn't limit this idea to human relationships. He encourages us to see the interconnectedness of everything and to surrender to the flow of life.
Absolutely.
And his words are so evocative here.
Oh, yeah.
He says, let it happen. And there's this incredible sense of freedom that comes with truly letting go.
There is.
But I'm curious, how do we actually apply this in our own lives?
Yeah.
It's all very well and good to talk about letting go of control.
Right.
But most of us are pretty attached to our steering wheels,
Oh, yeah.
even if they're just plastic ones.
It's a process, for sure.
Yeah.
Watts emphasizes that it's not about forcing ourselves to change overnight,
Okay.
but rather about cultivating a new awareness of how we relate to the world around us.
Neat. So instead of trying to micromanage every aspect of our lives, maybe we can start by noticing those moments where we're gripping too tightly,
Yeah,
whether it's in our relationships, our work, or even just our daily routines.
absolutely.
We'll dig into that more after a quick break.
So,
All right, so before the break, we were talking about how to actually practice letting go in our daily lives.
right.
It's easy to get caught up trying to control every little detail.
Oh, yeah.
But Watts suggests that there's a different way.
He encourages us to pay attention to those moments. When we feel that tight grip of control taking hold,
Okay.
it could be in our relationships, our work, or even just our daily routines.
Yeah.
Just notice where you're resisting the flow,
Right.
where you're trying to force things to go a certain way.
It's like when you're stuck in traffic and you start getting all tense and frustrated.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though you can't actually do anything to make the cars move faster.
A perfect example of trying to control something that's ultimately outside of our control.
Right.
And in those moments, Watts suggests we ask ourselves a simple question.
Okay, what's that?
What would happen if I just loosened my grip a little?
That's easier said than done.
It is.
It can be scary to surrender control, especially when we feel like things are at stake.
It does take courage. You know, it's a willingness to embrace uncertainty and vulnerability. But Watts suggests that it's precisely in those moments of surrender
Yeah.
that we discover a deeper sense of freedom and joy.
He even talks about how true satisfaction often comes from experiences that are somewhat outside of our control,
Right.
where there's an element of surprise or spontaneity.
He uses the example of playing with a gyroscope.
Okay.
It's partly under your control,
Uh-huh.
but it also has a life of its own,
Right.
which makes it all the more fascinating and enjoyable.
It's like those relationships where there's this playful back and forth where both people feel free to be themselves without trying to control or change each other.
Exactly. And he even extends this idea to the realm of sexuality,
Really?
suggesting that the greatest pleasure comes from giving your partner an orgasm. Because in that moment, you're completely focused on their pleasure, not your own.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
It is.
It's about letting go of ego and surrendering to the experience, trusting that everyone involved will benefit from it.
And he connects this to the concept of kenosis,
Yeah.
that self-emptying we were talking about earlier, which allows us to connect with something larger than ourselves.
So it's not about becoming passive or weak,
No.
but about consciously choosing to surrender our ego's need for control
Right.
in order to experience a deeper connection with ourselves, with others, and with the universe as a whole.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we're not separate, isolated entities, but rather integral parts of this vast interconnected web of life.
It's like we're all individual notes in a cosmic symphony.
Yeah.
And by letting go of our need to control the orchestra, we allow the music to flow through us in a more harmonious and beautiful way.
And that brings us back to Watt's provocative phrase,
Which is?
let it happen.
Yeah.
It's a call to surrender, a reminder that we don't have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders.
Right.
That we can trust the wisdom of the universe to guide us.
But what about responsibility? Does letting go mean we just abandon all our obligations
Okay.
and become passive observers of our own lives?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it leads us to one of Watt's most intriguing and challenging concepts.
Okay, I'm listening.
The idea that everything that happens to us
Yeah.
is in some way our own doing.
Wait, so you're saying that if something bad happens, it's our fault?
Well, no.
Okay.
He's not suggesting we blame ourselves or others for every misfortune.
Right.
It's much more nuanced than that.
Okay.
He's inviting us to see how our inner state,
Yeah.
our thoughts, beliefs, and expectations can subtly influence the experiences we attract into our lives.
So it's like we're all constantly emitting a kind of energetic frequency
Yeah.
that interacts with the frequencies of the world around us,
Exactly.
shaping our reality in ways we may not even be aware of.
It's like tuning a radio.
Hmm.
If you're tuned to a certain frequency,
Yeah.
you'll only pick up stations broadcasting on that same frequency. Similarly, if we're constantly focused on negativity, fear, or lack, we're more likely to attract experiences that mirror those frequencies.
That's a powerful way to think about it.
It is.
It suggests that by shifting our internal state,
Right.
by cultivating more positive, loving, and expansive thoughts and beliefs,
Yeah.
we can actually start to change the kinds of experiences we attract into our lives.
Precisely. And this doesn't negate personal responsibility
Okay.
or the need to take action.
Right?
It simply suggests that our inner world and our outer world are deeply interconnected, and that by working on ourselves, by becoming more conscious and compassionate beings,
Yeah.
we can create a more harmonious and fulfilling reality for ourselves and everyone around us.
This is making me think about how we often try to change our external circumstances
Yeah.
without addressing the underlying beliefs and patterns
Right.
that might be contributing to those circumstances.
That's a really important point.
Wow.
Watts emphasizes the importance of self-knowledge, of understanding our own motivations and desires.
So like looking inward.
He says, if you want to know who you are, don't look in the mirror, look at what you desire.
So our desires are a reflection of who we are at our core.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
They reveal our values, our fears, our hopes, and our dreams.
Right.
But Watts also cautions us against becoming too attached to our desires.
Why is that?
He reminds us that desires are always changing, always evolving.
Yeah.
What we want today might not be what we want tomorrow. And if we cling too tightly to our desires, we can end up feeling frustrated, disappointed, or even trapped.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
Watts suggests that by embracing the impermanence of life,
Yeah.
by letting go of our attachments to specific outcomes,
Okay.
we can open ourselves up to a much richer and more fulfilling experience.
This is all so much to process.
It is.
But it's starting to make sense.
It's
It's like we've been given a new set of lenses through which to view the world. And everything suddenly looks different.
It's like we've been given a new language to describe the ineffable. A language that allows us to articulate the profound interconnectedness we all feel deep down.
It's empowering, inspiring, and a little bit terrifying all at the same time.
It is.
But I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface here.
Yeah,
There's still so much more to uncover.
absolutely.
Especially when it comes to this idea that the self, as we typically conceive of it,
Yeah.
is an illusion. That's a big one.
It is a big one, and we'll delve into that more deeply in our next segment.
Okay.
Exploring Watts' perspective on the nature of reality, the illusion of the separate self, and the transformative power of letting go.
So we've been exploring some pretty mind-blowing ideas from Alan Watts
Oh, yeah.
about karma desire
Uh-huh.
and the interconnectedness of everything.
Yeah.
But I think we've saved the most radical concept for last.
Yeah.
The idea that the self,
Right.
as we usually think of it,
Yeah.
is an illusion.
It's definitely one of Watts' most challenging and thought-provoking ideas.
Yeah.
He argues that our sense of being a separate, isolated individual is actually a construct.
Mm.
kind of a mental fabrication we create to navigate the world.
But it feels so real.
Yeah.
I mean, I can feel my body. I have my own thoughts and experiences.
Right.
I'm clearly distinct from you and everyone else. How can that be an illusion?
It's a very convincing illusion. Watts uses the analogy of a wave in the ocean.
Okay.
The wave appears to be a separate entity with its own form and movement,
Right.
but in reality...
It's just water.
Exactly.
Inseparable from the ocean itself.
Exactly. And Watts suggests that we're kind of like waves in the ocean of consciousness.
Okay.
We have a temporary form, we rise and fall, we move and change.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we're not separate from the source from which we arise.
Okay. I'm starting to see the analogy, but it's
Yeah.
still a bit hard to wrap my head around.
Sure.
If the self is an illusion, who's
Yeah.
having all these experiences? Right.
Who am I if not this separate individual entity I thought I was?
That's the million-dollar question. And Watts would say that the answer isn't something you can find through thinking or analysis. It's something you experience directly.
Okay.
When you let go of the illusion of the separate self, when you surrender to the flow of life.
So it's not about figuring it out intellectually,
Right.
but about experiencing it directly.
Exactly. It's like trying to understand what it's like to swim by reading a book about swimming.
Okay.
You can learn all the technical details, but you won't truly know until you jump in the water.
So how do we jump in the water?
Yeah.
How do we let go of this illusion of this separate self and experience this deeper reality that Watts is pointing to?
Watts suggests it's not something that we can force or will ourselves into.
Okay.
It's a process of surrender, of letting go of our attachments to our thoughts, beliefs, and identities.
So it's about recognizing that who we are is far more vast and mysterious than any label or concept we could ever come up with.
So it's not about erasing our individuality or becoming some kind of blank slate.
Not at all. It's about recognizing that our individual selves are like unique expressions of this larger interconnected consciousness.
Okay.
It's like each of us is a different color in a beautiful tapestry.
Yeah,
We're distinct, but we're also woven together into a larger whole.
that's a beautiful way to put it.
Thanks.
But I have to admit, this whole idea of letting go of the self still makes me a bit nervous.
Sure.
Doesn't that mean we become irresponsible or lose our motivation to act in the world?
That's a common concern.
Yeah.
But Watts would argue the opposite.
Really?
He suggests that it's precisely by letting go of our ego's need for control that we become more compassionate, more responsive to the needs of others, and more effective in our actions.
Because we're no longer driven by our own selfish desires or fears.
Exactly. When we're not so caught up in our own little dramas, we're able to see the world more clearly, to understand the interconnectedness of everything, and to act in ways that benefit the whole rather than just ourselves.
It's like we're tapping into a source of wisdom and power that's far greater than our individual ego.
And that wisdom Watts suggests is always available to us if we're willing to quiet our minds, open our hearts, and surrender to the flow of life.
This has been an incredible journey.
It has.
Alan Watts' ideas are truly revolutionary.
They are.
And they've given me so much to think about.
It challenges us to question everything we think we know about ourselves, the world, and the nature of reality.
And he offers a path towards a more joyful, fulfilling, and meaningful existence.
Yeah.
One that's grounded in compassion, interconnectedness, and a deep trust in the wisdom of the universe.
If you've resonated with these ideas, I encourage you to explore Alan Watts' work further.
Yeah, there's a wealth of books, lectures, and recordings available
That's
that will continue to challenge and inspire you.
And remember, the journey of self-discovery is ongoing. It's not about reaching a final destination,
Right.
but about embracing the mystery and wonder of each moment.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep letting go.
Until next time, may you find peace, joy, and a deep sense of connection in the ever-unfolding tapestry of life.